people come from all walks of life. They all have lives they lead. Any and all are welcome here to come and chat with me.
Hello, everyone. Well, sometimes when I invite a guest on the show, I'll ask them to send a bio. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that I do. Anyway, that being said, today's guest sent me a bio, and he is, I hope I'm saying this right, Pegus Status Cree from Manitoba. He is an artist, a performer, and a facilitator with Indigenous Lineage. He's married and he has a couple of children. Ladies and gentlemen, happy to invite onto the show, Brander Raven McDonald.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, so did I say that right? Is it Pegus?
Peguis.
Peguis.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a community north of Winnipeg, about 4 hours.
Oh.
Yeah. It's
okay.
my father's treaty area, and my mom is from Norway House, Manitoba, and my dad was just north of Manitoba, but his family was on that's on the east shore, so his family's was on the west shore.
Right.
So there's a whole bunch of people that we're related to in those areas. There's other bands like Fisher River, Fisher Branch. Those are large bands. But my mom's band, Norway House, is a good 12-hour drive north of Winnipeg.
Oh. Okay.
It's east of Thompson. You have to go all the way almost to Thompson and then go east. So there's a lot of Cree, and then there's Ojibwe in the east, on the east side of the river. But that's my dad. Mom is from Norway House, and dad is from Peguis. And my dad was a commercial fisherman. Mm-hmm. My mom, they both came from large families, so that's, and then they moved us to BC when my dad got a job in northern BC in the 60s, early 60s. So I've been out here since then, and they've moved back.
But they did, eh? Yeah. And it's obviously you met your wife here. Mm-hmm. And she's a Mohawk, right?
Yeah, she's an interesting story. She's a 60s scoop. Okay. I call her a 60s scoop lady. And I found out she was Mohawk, so I thought, well, I better start taking care of myself, doing what I'm told. Very strong matriarchal system, and it works very well. It's fantastic. We're so happy. And we have 2 kids, and one's married, and we have a couple of grandkids already, and preteens already.
Wow. Yeah.
So, yeah. Didn't take long.
So it goes fast, doesn't it?
Yeah. Always have your grandkids first.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's just talk about the meaning of your name, right? According to the bio, it says that it's strong raven, and it has 2 meanings. Yeah.
It means somebody who stirs the fire. If there's a coal, the fire is kind of going out. It means to take a sword or a stick and stir the fire so that starts the fire going again. And the other one is to raise a sword. So one is somebody. I heard another interpretation of it, somebody who stirs the crap, or gets the conversation going, kind of thing, or asks hard questions. And I'm not the wisest happy meal in the elevator, so to speak. So I always ask questions, and sometimes I need to ask 3 or 4 times. But I'm that kind of guy. I just keep asking questions. So that's the name of that. That's the reason for that name. It's also it's derivative of an old Norse, 16th century Norse name that came through my mom's side of the family, and that was a Scotch Métis on her dad's side, and it has some history there. It's a last name, it's a first name, it's a lady's name, it's a guy's name. It's one of those names.
Right. That's fascinating. I find that names are always fascinating.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we without realizing, we misname children.
Yes. Interestingly, you mentioned that. I am in a conversation with a young Native fellow while he's younger than I am, which could be anything. And we're having a conversation around naming. He a First Nations guy that I worked with many years ago. So his concept about naming is something that you ask for. Out here, it's something that's given, and out in the West Coast or Coast Salish, particularly Stalo, I was taught that given names either to because you need to become those things that describe those things, or you are or it's a family history name that's passed on from generation to generation. So he is a Ojibwe from north central Ontario now. So I'm not sure what the tradition is. So I have my research I have to do, but he's requested it. So I have to traditionally lay out some tobacco, have ceremony, ask the creator, and then see what happens.
That's fascinating. It really is.
Yeah, it really is.
Now let's talk a little bit about you. You're a little bit more like you're an artist. So what kind of artist?
I was trained in abstract art expressions.
Oh, okay.
A local university in the Fraser Valley, and almost with therapy intended. So you know, of course, at university taking art, you have to have all your courses, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, but this particular training was about coming to the art with no preconceptions. Not even an image of what you want to create, and letting the brush, letting the paint, letting the materials dictate what it's supposed to be. And it's very much a more of a spiritual process for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've done that a few things. I've done a few commission work that's more graphic, you know, with regards to it has to look like a photograph or something.
Right.
Not the best at that. You know, there's so many people that are so talented. I'm more about process, and the kind of the painting will tell you when it's finished. It's a really interesting way of looking at it. So I'm almost thinking I might incorporate it into some consulting stuff with regards to Aboriginal youth, mental health needs. You know, people that just need to use that other part of their brain to find healing. But that's the kind of art that I've done for years, and I've sold a few works privately. Nothing fantastic, and they're all big works. Lots of acrylic. You know, everything is at least 3 feet wide by 4 feet high.
Okay.
That kind of thing. You know, and some people who look at it and they just, you know, they either hate it or they love it, or they just, you know, not sure what to think about it. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, they're going to find their own thing, right?
Yeah, it's a very subjective thing. My wife's an interior designer in the Valley, and she says the hardest thing to spec for families that she works with is art. It's so subjective, you know, and she can spec things all day long, but people either like it or they don't.
Yeah.
Whether or not it fits the space, you know, color wise or whatever, people react more from their gut. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I often volunteer at the art gallery here in Chilliwack, and I love it because I get to see so many different kinds of art. And I personally like abstract, but I also like all kinds of other art as well, you know. Anyway, it's not about me. This is about you. So you're a performer, right? Are you a singer?
When I can, yeah.
Okay. Are you a singer?
I'm a songwriter.
Oh, okay.
I just had an ability to, you know, take chords and put a sentence structure together to fit those chords early on. I'm not a proficient musician of any sort. You know, I'm dabbling. Even though I went to university for music, I went there in my late 20s, almost 30s. So I was always playing catch up musically. I started playing the guitar, and I still think I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar, but it's easier for me to do a lyric and lay some chords over it than it is to do anything else. And then I have some proficiency in terms of how to express it, whether it's various styles. You know, there's certain styles I just can't do, and every musician sort of has a niche of what they can and can't do, and what their favorite thing is. So
For sure.
I've tried different things. I've recorded different things. I've never, you know, never really been a musician of any sort, so to speak. I know there's lots of people that play all the time, and you know, tons of songs, and I just know the few that I have done over the years, and that's my main thing. But I'm a musician and an artist, so sort of a creative person, and but yeah, that songwriting would be the number one thing for me.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about being a facilitator with Indigenous Lineage.
Well, it's interesting. My journey starts with growing up being told that the only way to survive in this world was to disavow your native lineage, your nativeness. So we were not allowed to speak our language anymore after we moved to BC, because you know, it was the idea, well, we need to fit in, because it was a different place. BC is very different that way, but that's my experience. So growing up, you know, we were taught all things about church, and whenever we were asked questions about native ceremony, whatever that, we were just kind of pushed off to the side. And you know, my parents were very good at finding ways to distract us from that, and I love them dearly. But I think even now in their late ages, they're saying, well, this is, you know, we kind of, maybe we should have told you more, etc., especially with what's been going on lately.
Yeah.
But the short of the matter is, I went to university. I started taking some communications classes, and I found a job in Stalo, 1991, as a youth worker in Stalo Nation. And my first point of contact was a great lady, or is a great lady, Gwen Point, Dr. Gwen Point. She's a Chilliwack lady, and strong Stalo lady. And she mentored me, and she took me to see her kids dancing in local schools. And that was the beginning of my initiation back into my culture. So through the years, I used some of these communications concepts to look at various aspects of what is a native worldview, sort of, and what is a non-native worldview, and a way to assess both worldviews. What are the bridging points? What are the conversation points? What are the things that are hard and fast? What are the things that are flexible? You know, developing an understanding of why protocols came into being. I was really fascinated by that, and it helped me as a youth worker, a counselor, you know, various jobs that I've held over the last 30 years in that respect. And that even at one point, I taught group sessions, university group sessions about this. So that's sort of been my journey over the last, since 1991, when that all started. And I'm ever so grateful to Stalo people for being so willing and generous and kind-hearted, and long-suffering, because there's lots of times when I would make blunders, but you know, it's really a culture of grace to me. Us as Cree people, we're a little bit more outgoing, over-talkative, but I find that Stalo people are very kind and soft, and some things they don't want to share. Some things are sacred to share, they can't share. So they just say, well, come to this meeting and you happen to see stuff and learn all kinds of stuff. And I've just been kind of soaking it up and trying to share it with people I work with. I work with government right now, certain programs in the area of mental health. And there's a lot of workers that don't have any idea about this stuff. So
Yeah.
being able to bridge both worlds is a real skill to have. And lots of times they're very intimidated. So they maybe don't want to engage, or they're just a little intimidated. But I try to just shared my journey that way. So that's a short answer.
You listen, you can take as much time as you want. This is because this is about you. All right.
Okay.
No, I believe you're a very spiritual person, correct?
I try to be. Yeah.
I just find it interesting, you know, because I tell people I'm very earthbound, you know, right? That's who I am. But I think that people who like yourself who have been in counseling and like you said, bridging that gap, right? You know, it's important for people to like you to be out there where others can see you and hear about you.
Yeah, and you know, it's also this has been kind of happening for other people now for generations. I worked as a coordinator for survivors of residential schools for Stalo Nation for a short period of time before they decided to pursue litigation against the churches and against Canada's policies and so forth before the TRC. And what I found was the first generation, after residential schools closed down, they didn't really feel they had a voice.
Yeah.
You know, and then it kind of grew into having a voice as time went on. But the children coming up were the kids that I worked with, and they had a better voice. They had formulated. They knew what was happening, and then their kids now. My God, they are amazing. They are culturally astute. They know the language. They're educated. They're savvy with social media. They're great speakers. They're good thinkers. They know the law. You know, all kinds of stuff. You know, and I'm just so glad to kind of been alive long enough to see this. You know, so I'm very hopeful for the future that this will happen. And I see Canada kind of saying, "Oh, this has been happening," you know, and people paying a little bit more attention. So
Yeah.
it's been a progression that way. I see other people doing it as well.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important. And, you know, I'm a white person and it's important for me to speak with Indigenous people and so that I can unlearn what all the things that I was taught.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
I had to do the same. You know, I had a conversation a month ago. My mom is 86, and she goes, "Well, I just want to let you know I went to day school." I'm like, "Hello, where's that story? I'm 62." Okay, Mom. You know, you've been holding out a lot of things, interestingly enough. And then my dad pipes in, you know, well, your grandma's or your great grandma was at Cow. She went to Cowes. First Nation is the one that they found 750 unmarked graves.
yeah.
Well, how did she survive? Well, she kept running away and running away and running away. This is the story.
Right.
Until they just didn't go get her anymore. I'm like, really? You know, so there's all these kinds of stories, or stories where I said, why did everybody have a plane back in the day in northern Manitoba? And they said, well, the best way to take kids and hide them in the bushes was to do the same thing that the Indian agents did. They came by plane. So we had our own planes. So whenever we could hear something, we just take off. So there's some, you know, you hear all these stories quite late on, and you know, it's changed. It's changed our family system. We had parts of our system where they perceived indigeneity and spirituality as something that was like, well, not quite the thing we want to follow. But since they found and continue to find our family members, the conversations are, Brander, can you teach me how to smudge? There's a sibling asking me this. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like, where, you know, that conversation before was like, you know, are you really comfortable with that kind of spiritual system? And I had one conversation was, well, Brander, what happens in the longhouse? You know, we never taught you that kind of spiritual system. And I said, well, it's a prayer meeting in the dark and it's very hot. So, you know, it's a different kind of spiritual. It looks different, but it ends up being the same thing. You know, we're still talking with the Creator as best we can and walking as best we can. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Great. Now, you changing the subject a little bit, you give seminars?
I have in the past, and I do for my work.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about those cultural elements. We talk about what it's like to live on both sides, what it's like to build, how to have conversations, how to not breach protocol, why protocols came into being, basic tenets of what a native worldview would look like. And I do know that there are distinctions between First Nations systems and so forth. But that's kind of what I do. It's almost like a crash course in anthropology.
Yeah.
You're given it's kind of like a tool book. You know, a list that you keep in your mind. Like, for instance, one paradigm may be where its individuality is key versus group identity is very key. One is where belonging is an endpoint, whereas another one where belonging is a starting point. Things like a connection to all things and relational responsibility to all things is one side, whereas the other one is I'm sort of the master of my own destiny. One might be wealth is described as a physical thing that you've worked for, or wealth is something that you were born into because you've got this big family. So there's all these different kinds of things, you know, like listening skills. These were counselors. Listening skills is being there. First Nations perspective might be just being there physically, being more important and providing a sense of place versus interpersonal helping skills, open-ended questions, you know, and they're very interrogative almost. You know, there's different kinds of things that this whole thing I teach is about. It takes a few hours. Sometimes it takes a couple of days, depends on what kind of work they want to do.
Right.
But it's changed my life. That's why I thought, you know, it gave me sort of a head start in terms of how to engage with my own nations, because I wasn't raised that way. I needed something, a tool to look at that. So I had a conversation yesterday with some work colleagues, asked me to come in and chat with them with regards to ceremonies. What are the natures of ceremony? So for instance, I always use three things. What is the form of the ceremony? What does it look like? You know, what are the actual physical elements of the ceremony? What is the function of the ceremony? What's it supposed to do? And then thirdly, what's the focus? So what's the long-term takeaway of that? You know, so those three things I just kept in my mind and learning over and over again. And so those are the things, the kind of things that I talk about. And it's really been helpful for me. Yeah.
Is that also what you do with your blog?
I try. I've always dabbled in doing that. I was doing it a lot on Facebook. Just personally, people were wanting to hear some of my comments, but I think they ended up becoming more rants and not very positive, you know. Especially, yeah, but that's what I was thinking about doing. Yeah. So,
Very good. Well, I think we're just about out of time. I hope we get everything in there, you know, but people can find you online, right? If they want to.
yeah. It's www.branderraven.weebly.com.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
branderraven.weebly.com.
Okay, I'll get that after when we finish the taping. I'll write it down properly so that I can include that.
Sure.
Okay. So, but I really appreciate you doing this with me.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I'm very honored that you would do that. I haven't sat for an interview ever
Really?
like this. No.
Oh,
Well,
I love it when people are willing to do this with me. I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't do it in person, which is
yeah,
so much better, but what we have to do, work with what we have at the moment. But and if you ever want to be back on the show, listen, I'm always happy to have people return. So just
anytime you have something that you find interesting on maybe my website.
okay, that'd be great. That'd be great. If you have something coming up you wanted to share, because I can post this, I can air it anytime I want. Because like I'm just on my own doing this, I'm not affiliated with anything. So if I want to post it, like air it tonight, I can do that, or tomorrow, whatever. So it all works really well. Anyway, so just hold on while I say goodbye to the audience, okay?
Sure.
Thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Brander Raven at McDonald. Sorry, I've got to put his last name in there. And if you want to look him up, I'm going to have his contact information with his name. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you watch again. Until then, everybody, peace out.
Thank you.
A sense of community, till the wax a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.